Hi, I'm Mike Keenan. I've coached and managed in the National Hockey League over the last 20 years. I've won the Stanley Cup. I've traveled the world, but I've never found a place quite like Port-McNicoll. I've been here all my life. I'm the third generation of my family to live here, and I'm so proud and excited to be part of the amazing renaissance of my hometown. So join me in this journey and hear the story of what makes Port-McNicoll so unique. One of the world's great waterfront resorts is about to come to life. See you in the harbor next summer.
This is a magical place, here where the land ends and the lake begins. Across the waves, the Canadian Shield rises up in ridges of rugged granite and pine and scatters 30,000 islands through the bay. And here, in a place like nowhere else on Earth, a rare and remarkable event is about to happen. For one brief moment, you will have the opportunity to own a custom estate home on the finest deepwater harbor on the Great Lakes, set at the sheltered entrance to the largest freshwater archipelago in the world. This is Port-McNicoll, the single most glorious setting on the finest boating lake on Earth. For centuries, the Huron and the Iroquois traced the shoreline in graceful birch bark canoes. Jesuits, with their black robes, came down the bay with Bibles and crosses and the flag of New France. Fur traders returned from the endless forests of the north, heavy laden with marten and beaver and silver fox. And the Group of Seven immortalized it with watercolor and oil. Recently, the United Nations declared Georgian Bay a World Biosphere Reserve, so it will be protected for all time. And because of an act of foresight, these heritage lands have been set aside for 100 years. Back in the day of the great passenger liners with their elegant staterooms, fine china, and white glove service, Canadian Pacific began the search for a sheltered, deepwater port close to Toronto as the southern terminus for their Great Lakes fleet. The place they chose was Port-McNicoll, and here, a century ago, they built a magnificent harbor that would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to recreate today. It was the beginning of a golden age of adventure travel. Grand white ships would steam up Severn Sound, arriving from the distant west, while flags fluttered and dance bands played. But in 1965, Canadian Pacific ended their passenger service and closed the port. From that day on, these precious 6.5 miles of shoreline were preserved and protected, waiting for the moment when the port would flourish again. This is that moment. The renaissance of Port-McNicoll has begun. Today, Canada's Georgian Bay is a playground that attracts people from across North America and around the world. 4 seasons, 12 months a year, there's adventure waiting. Some of the best freshwater fishing in Canada for walleye and bass, muskellunge and sturgeon is just off the point. Skiing at Mount St. Louis Moonstone and Horseshoe Valley is minutes away. You can cross country on the trail that leads through town. Snowmobile, bike, hike, canoe the Wye Marsh, or go skating on the slip like families here have done for a century. And it's just half an hour to all the excitement of Casino Rama. 5 minutes from a regional hospital and all the amenities of Midland, and 70 minutes on a major highway from Toronto. It's the finest waterfront resort setting on the Great Lakes. The renaissance of Port-McNicoll will encompass 825 master-planned acres of waterfront, 4 magnificent bays, and a rare privately owned deepwater harbor 600 feet wide and almost a mile long. Here, you will find one of the last opportunities to own, not lease, waterfront estate property on the Great Lakes. It's a resort experience on par with the finest in the world, with hotel-style services available to every home, managed by Skyline, the name behind Toronto's award-winning Pantages Hotel, and the Cosmopolitan, the only hotel in Canada on Condé Nast's Top 100 list. Visit the restaurant or the elegant spa, and as an owner, you will also have the choice of using hotel-style services on an a la carte basis, from the concierge, maid, laundry, and cleaning, to grocery shopping, grass cutting, and maintenance. Imagine arriving in Port-McNicoll a few short years from now. The lights of restaurants and cafes sparkle on either side, and couples stroll arm in arm past the quaint shops that have just opened up. Others are returning from the beach at the head of the slip. The stores by the harbor are busy with shoppers, and the patios are filled with the sound of conversation and laughter. Owning at Port-McNicoll makes you a steward of the environment. Almost half of the 825 acres here is nature reserve. As you drive through the gates to your private estate, you pass the pond, where a family of swans swim slowly in circles in their protected nesting ground. From the wetlands comes the deep call of a bullfrog. A pair of ducks rise on the wind that comes in from across the bay. It's a perfect moment, a Port-McNicoll moment. Owning here means owning one of the most remarkable properties in the world. Every home will possess its own style, custom built to the specifications of its owners. But there's a definite character to Port-McNicoll that gives the renaissance of this town its own unique flavor. Classic verandas and widow's walks and clapboard siding and old stone. These homes could be in Martha's Vineyard or Tofino or Key West, but together, this couldn't be anywhere other than Port-McNicoll. Legendary boating, unsurpassed living, unspoiled, uncrowded, unequaled. It's the renaissance of Port-McNicoll, and it's like no other place on earth.